Damn it, Conrad. Will you ever shut up? I muttered under my breath as my boss droned on during another one of his insufferable team meetings. Conrad Davis loved the sound of his own voice almost as much as he loved, reminding us he was one of the rising young managerial stars at Davis Enterprises, as if we all didn't know that already. Which is why I expect each of you to go above and beyond on this major account. The CEO himself will be evaluating our pitch, Conrad was saying. I tuned him out, fantasizing about the glorious moment when I could escape to the basement break room, my heaven away from this corporate hell. As Conrad finally dismissed us, I made a beeline for the stairwell, dodging inquiries about drinks later. I had no interest in wasting my evening brown nosing. The musty basement was blissfully deserted as I fired up the ancient coffee maker, just me, an earthy chamomile tea, and, well, if it isn't the Ice Queen herself, a familiar voice rang out. Mariah from accounting was leaning against the doorway, smirking. I shot her my patented death glare. Don't you have some number crunching to bore yourself with, Mariah? Ooh, feisty. Maybe if you got laid once in a while, you wouldn't be such a... I snatched up my tea and swept past her out the door. So much for my haven. I stormed back up to my cubicle, downing the chamomile in heated gulps. So much for finding any peace and quiet today. As I booted up my computer, the flashing mail notification light caught my eye. A new message from Conrad, likely another lengthy diatribe about the upcoming pitch. I braced myself and opened it. Sure enough, an essay's worth of buzzwords and corporate jargon urging us all to put our best foot forward and exceed expectations. I rolled my eyes so hard it was practically an exercise. Screw this, I needed to get out of here before I strangled someone, preferably Conrad, with his own idiotic necktie. Grabbing my purse, I made for the stairwell again, ignoring Mariah's amused smirk as I passed. This time, the basement was thankfully deserted. I sank into one of the dingy break room chairs with a relieved sigh, the silence a balm for my frayed nerves. Only the steady drip of the leaky faucet disturbed the quiet, until a muffled shuffling reached my ears. I froze, ears pricking up. Rats. Oh, hell no, I was out of here if... Oh, A tall, broad-shouldered figure stepped into the room, looking equally startled to see me. He had a warm smile, messy chestnut hair, and cheeks tinged with an adorable flush. Sorry, I didn't realize anyone would be down here, he stammered, hand rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. My breath caught in my throat. Just who was this handsome creature? I'm Will. Will Cook, the handsome stranger introduced himself, extending a large hand. I work in accounting. I eyed his calloused palm for a moment before giving it a brief shake. Elijah, as our hands touched, spark up. Something zinged through me. Our gazes locked, his warm brown swimming with uncertainty, yet undeniably intrigued. Get it together, Elijah. This is just some dude from the office, not a Harlequin romance cover model. Clearing my throat, I waved vaguely at the sad-looking sofa. Please have a seat if you want. I was just taking a break myself. You mean hiding from Conrad's long-winded speeches? A wry grin played across Will's lips as he settled onto the sagging cushion. I barked out a surprised laugh before I could stop myself. Guilty as charged. That man loves tormenting us all with his verbal diarrhea. Tell me about it. Will rolled his eyes good-naturedly. I usually find a quiet spot to have my coffee and just decompress. This used to be my go-to refuge, I admitted. But if you've claimed it already, I can find somewhere else to brood in peace. I made a move to stand, but his warm chuckle stopped me. Stay, please. It's nice having some company for once, if you don't mind. Our gazes met again, a spark crackling in the air. Slowly, I resettled on the couch, tucking a stray hair behind my ear. So accounting, huh? I cleared my throat. That must be riveting. Will threw his head back with a rich laugh that had my heart doing somersaults. The basement became our sanctuary over the next few weeks. Will and I fell into an easy routine, meeting in the dingy break room every afternoon to decompress after another mind-numbing day at Davis Enterprises. I quickly discovered we had more in common than just needing refuge from Conrad's long-winded diatribe. Will was a classic literature buff who could quote everything from Shakespeare to Austen. He'd recite snatches of poetry or prose, his rich voice caressing every syllable as I hung on his every word, transfixed. Then there were the day-to-day things we bonded over, venting about Mariah's catty remarks, debating whether the stale cookies in the vending machine were edible, seeing who could construct the most ridiculously over-the-top corporate jargon phrases. How's this? I'd say in my best Conrad impression, we need to strategize a dynamic paradigm shift to maximize our core competencies. Will shake his head solemnly. Too many buzzwords, not enough meaningless drivel about synergies or air best practices. We'd collapse into helpless laughter, my usual icy demeanor melting away in the warmth of his presence. My haven had become so much more. Of course, there were the little things that made my pulse race. The way Will's shirt sleeves strained against his toned forearms, how his fingers would linger on mine when passing me a mug, the maddening twinkle in his eyes whenever he caught me staring. One afternoon, I finally broached the tension charging the air. "So, Will, what do you do for fun around here?" I asked, trying for nonchalance as I traced the rim of my teacup. "When you're not charming your way into girls' hearts with those poems, I mean." The tips of his ears flushed adorably. Well, I actually haven't had much luck charming anyone lately," he murmured, rubbing his neck. "I'm not really the kind of guy girls go for, I'm afraid." I arched an eyebrow as the realization bloomed. "Oh, then what about, guys?" Our gazes met, heat crackling between us. Will wet his lips, hands flexing almost imperceptibly. "I've been hoping you might say that," he finally breathed. 1 minute we were gazing at each other, the heated tension almost unbearable. The next, Will's hands were cupping my face as our lips crashed together in a searing kiss. A startled whimper escaped me as his tongue plundered my mouth, claiming me hungrily. My fingers clutched at the fabric of his shirt, pulling him impossibly closer as I melted against the solid wall of his chest. "Elijah," he groaned when we finally broke for air, foreheads pressed together. His hands roamed freely now, callous palms blazing a scorching trail down my sides. "I've wanted this for so long." "Then take it," I heard myself rasp, already reaching for his belt buckle. "Take whatever you want from me." A predatory growl rumbled in Will's throat as he attacked the buttons of my blouse, exposing the lace of my bra. His mouth found my neck, sucking hot kisses along my racing pulse point. Rational thought fled as I arched shamelessly into his touch. Who would have thought the dingy basement would become the setting for such reckless desire? My blouse hit the floor, shortly followed by Will's shirt as I drank in the glorious expanse of his chiseled torso. He captured my lips again in a wild, messy clash of teeth and tongue. "Need you," he panted gruffly against my lips, deftly unhooking my bra to free my aching breasts. "All of you right now." "Yes," I hissed fervently, dragging him back down to smother his neck and chest with hot, open-mouthed kisses. "Take me, Will, I'm yours." With a low groan of satisfaction, he pinned me against the ratty sofa and sealed our fervent pact. So much for the basement being a haven of peace and quiet. But as Will's powerful frame moved over me in a frenzied rhythm, I couldn't find it in me to care. Not when this felt so blissfully, perfectly right. In the aftermath, we lay tangled together on the worn sofa, chests heaving. Will peppered tender kisses along my jawline as I idly traced the contours of his muscular back. I trailed off, at a loss for words to describe the intensity of what we just shared. Will chuckled warmly, nuzzling my neck. I'll say, who knew accountants could be so wild? I gave his firm backside an appreciative squeeze, grinning wickedly. "Oh, I have a feeling you're just getting started, Mr. Cook." Our banter dissolved into another heated makeout session, hands roaming greedily over exposed skin. Will rolled us abruptly, pinning me beneath his solid weight as he trailed searing kisses down my body. "I've been dreaming about tasting you," he rumbled, nipping at the sensitive skin of my inner thigh. "Spread those gorgeous legs for me, Elijah." I was powerless to resist, willingly falling open for him with a shameless whimper. His wicked tongue found its target, stroking velvet heat in deliberate swirls and flicks. Oh God, my back arched desperately off the cushions. Who knew the sweet, bashful Will could be so deliciously filthy? Bucking my hips shamelessly, I knotted my fingers tight in his tousled hair to hold him in place. He groaned his approval against my slick flesh, the vibrations tingling deliciously. Just as the coiling tension became exquisitely unbearable, a harsh metallic clang rang out. We froze, Will's hot mouth still buried in my flushed sex. Footsteps echoed from the hallway, loud and unhurried. Someone was coming. "Shit," Will hissed, frantic eyes meeting mine as he scrambled for our scattered clothes. I could only watch in a dazed, unfocused stupor as he tossed my rumpled blouse over, hurriedly redressing. The break room door handle turned inexorably. "Quick, hide." Will shoved me behind the ancient recliner just as a matronly figure entered. It was Janice, one of the ancient cleaning ladies famous for her hawk-eyed ability to catch people breaking rules. She did a classic double take at the sight of Will, trousers still undone and hair askew. "Sorry, ma'am," he sputtered, face blushing crimson as he hastily buckled his belt. "I was just, Save it, Sonny," Janice snapped, narrowing her mummy eyes. "I know a fella camping out for a nooner when I see one. You've got 5 minutes to get while the getting is good, before I report y'all." She jabbed a bony finger menacingly at Will, who nodded furiously and bolted without a backwards glance. I stayed frozen in my hiding spot, raw desire rapidly congealing into icy dread. What if Janice told Conrad or someone else about catching Will in here? Our clandestine tryst would be over before they'd even properly begun. Once the coast was clear, I slunk out from my hiding place and hastily righted my appearance, mentally steeling myself. From now on, we'd have to be far more careful keeping our torrid affair under wrap. Little did I know, our carelessness in the heat of passion was just the beginning of my troubles. In the weeks after our near miss with Jance, Will and I became experts at concealing our forbidden liaisons. Heated glances and innuendos crackled between us in meetings, building the delicious tension until we could sneak off for frenzied trysts. The supply room, tucked away on an abandoned floor during renovations, quickly became our new favored lair. More than once I found myself bent over a dusty filing cabinet, Will's calloused hands roaming greedily as he pounded into me from behind. My whimpers and cries were muffled against the cool metal as I white-knuckled the handles. "That's it, gorgeous," he'd growl raggedly in my ear, hips pistoning. "Take every thick inch like you were made for me." Other times we'd chance stolen moments in empty hallways or vacant offices when everyone else was at lunch. I'd hike up my skirt and brace myself against the wall as Will dropped hungrily to his knees, dragging my damp panties aside to bury his talented tongue between my thighs. The thrill of potentially being caught only heightened our arousal. We became increasingly reckless, practically drunk on our insatiable need. Then one fateful afternoon, as I was riding Will's impressive link on the desk of an unused conference room, everything fell apart. One second I was arching my back in pure ecstasy, breathy cries escaping my lips. The next, a gruff baritone shattered the haze of our passion. Just what in the hell is going on here? My blood turned to ice at the familiar furious timbre. Conrad, he'd caught us finally in one of our most compromising positions imaginable. Will and I instantly scrambled apart, fumbling desperately to cover ourselves. But Conrad's thunderous gaze was locked unblinkingly on me, disgust and disbelief right across his features. Elijah's tone dripped with revulsion, my own flesh and blood defiled in such an unholy way. With him? Numbly, I shook my head, dread rapidly congealing into nausea as realization set in. Conrad knew. He knew the sick truth I'd hidden from Will this entire time. You're the heir to Davis Enterprises. Will's shattered whisper cracked like a whip across the tense silence. Of course, sweet, naive Will had no idea. "I can explain, I swear," I pleaded, clutching my ruined blouse to cover my nudity. "Will, please, let me—" But the devastated look in his eyes cut off my words. In one agonizing heartbeat, Will simply turned and fled the room, leaving me humiliated and bare before my father's wrath. Conrad's hand struck like a viper, cruel fingers clamping around my arm in a vice-like grip as he yanked me bodily to his snarling visage. "You ungrateful deviant whore," he spat with vicious contempt. "Did you really think I'd let you sully our family legacy like this? With that pansy faggot from accounting?" I tried weakly to pull free, but his loathing glare pinned me in place like a moth transfixed. "And no daddy, please?" The backhand cracked across my face with stunning force, snapping my head to the side with a stunned cry. I crumpled bonelessly to the floor, cradling my stinging cheek as Conrad towered over me in a cold rage. "You're done, Elijah. Done. You hear me? I'll see to it that deviant cocksucker's fired and ruined. As for you," his lips curled in a sneer of pure hatred, "you'll be sent away somewhere to be corrected. This pathetic lifestyle ends now." Tears streamed down my face as Conrad turned on his heel, storming out and leaving me naked, broken, and utterly alone. My worst nightmare had been realized, and in his vindictive wrath, Conrad was going to make sure I paid the ultimate price for my defiantly queer love. In the aftermath of Conrad's rage, I could barely function. I drifted through the motions of each day feeling hollow, numb. There was no sign of Will. He'd vanished without a trace from the office. No matter how many pleading messages I left, he wouldn't respond. I couldn't blame him after the horrific way he'd learned my true identity. Knowing I was Conrad's heir, the spoiled spawn of the very man trying to destroy him, it must have shattered his heart. As for Conrad, his icy disdain cut deeper than any physical blow. He'd forbidden me from returning to my apartment, insisting I move back into the suffocating family estate immediately. "You're to have no contact with the outside world until alternative arrangements are made," he sneered, gaze flickering with disgust. I knew what he meant, conversion therapy or some other nightmarish rehabilitation regimen to brutally purge me of my deviant sexuality. He refused to even say the word gay around me. With my spirit crushed and my lover gone, I felt powerless against Conrad's cruel machinations. What could I possibly do to escape his oppressive clutches? Just when I'd begun slipping into a chasm of despair, my sister Allison arrived for her monthly visit home. We'd always been extremely close, our unbreakable bond the only warmth in our cold family. "Eli?" She knocked softly on my bedroom door. "It's me. Can I come in?" I bifurcated, quickly scrubbing at my puffy eyes. "Sure, it's open." Allison took one look at my wrecked appearance and instantly rushed over, enveloping me in her comforting embrace. "Oh, sweetie, what's wrong? Has Daddy been cruel to you again?" She cupped my tear-stained face gently. "You know you can tell me anything." It all came pouring out in a torrent. My relationship with Will, Conrad catching us together, his hateful plan to have Will fired and me sent away. Allison simply held me tighter, rocking me tenderly as I sobbed into her shoulder. "This is unacceptable," she declared fiercely once I'd wound down. Her green eyes flashed with rare venom, aimed at our monstrous father. "I won't let him destroy your life like this, just because of his ignorant biases." Reaching into her skirt pocket, she handed me a glossy business card. "These are Civil Liberties Union lawyers, the best in the state at LGBTQ persecution cases. We're going to fight Conrad on this and get you free from his toxic oppression once and for all." I gaped at her in stunned disbelief. But how? He's so powerful, ally. If he finds out we're going against him, he'll..." She fixed me with that blazing, determined look that always made me feel like she could slay dragons with sheer will alone. "Let me worry about dealing with Daddy's wrath. You just focus on getting your lover back and clearing your name. It's time we stood up to that bastard for your happiness." As I clutched Allison's card with a renewed surge of hope and defiance, I knew she was right. No more would I cower under Conrad's cruel tyranny and let him run roughshod over my life. If it was war he wanted, then war he would have. With my fierce sister as my secret ally, I would rain righteous hellfire down upon my father until he finally lost his stranglehold over me once and for all. Armed with Allison's support and the Aklu lawyers' counsel, I felt a newfound sense of emboldened defiance. No more would I slink in the shadows, tormented by Conrad's hatred. It was time to fight for the life and love I deserved. The first step was reaching out to Will one last time. If I could get him to meet to explain everything properly, maybe I could win back his trust. So I penned a heartfelt letter, bearing my soul about my feelings for him and my commitment to standing up to my father. "Please, I'm begging you," I wrote with trembling hand. "Let me make this right between us. You mean everything to me, Will. I can't lose you without a fight." I enlisted Mariah's help, pushing the sealed envelope into her hands with pleading instructions to pass it directly to Will. She eyed me strangely but didn't pry. Small mercies. Blessed days crawled by in torturous silence with no response. I tried not to lose hope, pouring my energy into working with the Aklu team. They were putting together an ironclad case against Conrad's discrimination, amassing evidence of his loathsome homophobia and abuse of power. Just when it seemed like all was lost, Mariah appeared at the apartment one evening with Will in tow. My heart leaped at the sight of his handsome face, etched with uncertainty. "He insisted on speaking to you," Mariah said brusquely before ducking away, leaving us alone. An awkward beat of silence stretched between us. Will looked haggard yet still achingly beautiful to me. I drank in every detail greedily, terrified this might be my last chance. "You came," I finally breathed, taking a tremulous step closer. "Will, Your letter," he cut me off abruptly, jaw clenched. It was a lot to take in, to say the least. I knew there had to be some huge secret you were keeping, but learning you're the heir to Davis Enterprises, that your demented father is Conrad, Christ, Elijah, I can't even begin. My throat burned, but I willed myself not to cry. Not yet. "I know, and you have every right to be furious, but Will, I swear on my life, I never lied to hurt you. I was terrified of how you'd react to the truth about my family." He dragged a frustrated hand through his tousled hair, exhaling roughly. "Well, you weren't wrong, were you? Finding out the man I love is the spawn of the asshole who fired me for being gay. It's a lot to process." Hesitantly, I reached out to grasp his hand and was relieved when he didn't pull away. "You're right, it is. But the important thing is I love you, Will, more than I've ever loved anyone before, and I'm done letting my father control my life and ruin us." Staring deep into his soulful eyes, I poured out every ounce of conviction I possessed. The Aulu is helping me fight back against Conrad. I want to sue him, the company, anyone involved in this disgusting discrimination, to clear your name and get your job back. As for me, I squeezed his fingers meaningfully. Once I'm free of his evil grasp, I want to be with you. For real this time, no more hiding or lies between us. Just two people in love, living their truth openly together. Will's handsome features contorted with a myriad of emotions, anger, sadness, but also that spark of yearning hope I clung to desperately. "Eli." He finally sighed my name like a prayer, lifting his free hand to reverently cup my cheek. "You know I still love you. I never stopped, in spite of the hurt and confusion." My breath hitched as he drew fractionally closer, heat blazing in his rich amber eyes. "If you really mean this, if you have the strength to take on that vile bastard, then you damn well better win, because I can't keep living without you in my life, beautiful." The endearment was my undoing. With a broken sob, I surged upwards and seized his mouth in a searing, breath-stealing kiss. Will's powerful arms banded around me instantly, crushing our bodies flush as we staked our defiant claim. When we finally parted, I rested my forehead against his and allowed the determined tears to roll down my cheeks. Whatever it takes, Will. I'll fight until my dying breath to destroy my father's toxic grip. I want to be yours forever. Then let's go to war, he murmured fiercely, kissing me again with blazing conviction. With Will's love fortifying my resolve and the indomitable spirit Allison instilled in me, there was no force in this world that could stop me from dismantling Conrad's hateful oppression once and for all. Squaring my shoulders, I strode into the ancient mahogany-paneled boardroom of Davis Enterprises like a woman reborn. Gone was the cowering, browbeaten son terrified of Conrad's rage. In his place stood a proud, defiant soul ready to break free of his father's toxic chains once and for all. The distinguished members of the board regarded me with clear surprise as I took my place at the long table. No doubt word had spread about the pending lawsuit, the seismic scandals engulfing our family's company. My gaze coolly met each of their skeptical looks in turn before settling squarely on Conrad. The wretched man couldn't seem to decide between apoplectic fury or sickened revulsion at my presence, both emotions warring across his model features. At my side, Will gave my hand a reassuring squeeze under the table. Drawing strength from his stalwart support, I rose to address the hushed room. The members of the board, I come before you today to expose a systemic culture of discriminatory hatred that's been allowed to fester unaddressed in this company for far too long. My voice rang out strong and clear, showing no trace of my former weakness. As you're all no doubt aware, I'm taking legal action against Davis Enterprises and my own father Conrad for abhorrent discrimination, harassment, and abuse of power based on sexual orientation. A shocked murmur rippled through the assembled suits. Conrad shot to his feet, ruby-faced and sputtering indignantly. This is an outrage. I won't allow you to defame me or this company with your perverted lifestyle, boy. Enough. A steely baritone sliced through Conrad's bluster like a whip crack. All eyes turned to the imposing, silver-haired figure at the head of the table, my grandfather Franklin Davis, chairman of the board. You'll sit down and be silent, Conrad, Franklin intoned with an air of command that brokered no argument. Your despicable behavior dishonors everything this family legacy stands for. It's clear you've lost any semblance of perspective or reason. Conrad opened and closed his mouth uselessly, veins bulging in his forehead as Franklin turned his penetrating stare on me. Please continue, Elijah. The full truth of this matter must be laid bare so we can extricate any antiquated prejudices from our corporate ethics. Bolstered by my grandfather's support, I launched into my impassioned recounting. I held nothing back, detailing Conrad's insidious homophobia, his abusive lashing out at me, his callous firing of will, and a vindictive display of discrimination. As the sordid facts piled up, a pall of horrified disbelief and revulsion fell over the boardroom. Conrad had buried his face in his hands, though whether from contrition or impotent rage I couldn't tell. By the time I finished my gripping tale, pivotal pieces of evidence were projected on the screens behind me. To your records, email, transcripts, even an audio recording supplied by Allison of Conrad shouting vile slurs at me. The incontrovertible proof of his hateful bigotry hung in the air like a putrid stench. I could see the decision in the stricken, disgusted faces around the table. Franklin cleared his throat, eternally dignified even as his eyes bored into his disgraced son with a cold fury. Conrad Davis, in light of these unforgivable transgressions against our core ethical principles, you are hereby relieved of all duties and positions at Davis Enterprises effective immediately. The board has no choice but to terminate your involvement in this company in its entirety. A stunned silence greeted this pronouncement. Conrad seemed to collapse in on himself. The wrath leached from his body as the gleaming blade of karma finally struck home. As for me, it was all I could do to maintain my composure as the enormity of this victory washed over me. I was free, finally free of Conrad's insidious poison and oppression. Sensing my overwhelmed state, Will wrapped a grounding arm around my shoulders and nuzzled my hair. I sat gratefully into his sheltering embrace as the boardroom erupted with activity around us. It's over, beautiful, he murmured in my ear. We won. Catching sight of Allison's proud, blazing smile amidst the chaos, I could only mouth a tremulous and thank you as the first joyful tears traced my cheeks. At long last, the shackles had rusted away. My new life, our new life together, was just beginning. In the aftermath of that seismic boardroom showdown, the walls came crumbling down at Davis Enterprises. Conrad was forcibly removed from the premises, flanked by security, as he alternated between bellowing, impotent threats and collapsed, haunted silence. His power and malignant reach were utterly obliterated. Like a drained snake, his poisonous venom was rendered toothless against me, against us. I could scarcely believe the world of suffocating torment and fear Conrad had inflicted was finally over. Even as the dust settled and normalcy attempted to return, it felt almost surreal. Was I dreaming this cathartic release from his tyranny? The grounding presence of Will's arms enveloping me helped anchor me in this euphoric new reality. His strength and devotion throughout the grueling battle was my lighthouse in the roiling storm. Now, as the first rays of hope shone through, Will was the one ushering me into the blazing dawn of our liberated tomorrow. "Hey, you okay?" His deep timbre rumbled against the crown of my head, tucked snugly beneath his chin. "You're shaking like a leaf, babe." I hadn't even realized the fine tremors racking my frame in the wake of such overwhelming relief. Swallowing hard, I tipped my face up to lose myself in the warm amber pools of his concerned eyes. I'm free," I rasped, the words feeling foreign yet heady on my tongue. After living under his tyranny for so long, I don't know how to exist outside of Conrad's oppressive shadow. A tender look softened Will's chiseled features. His work-calloused palms cradled my face with infinite tenderness, thumbs brushing the dampness from my cheeks. "That bastard's darkness doesn't have to define you anymore, Eli. You forged your own path out of the hatred, into the light, into my arms where you were always meant to be, free in love for who you truly are." His lips brushed mine in a whisper of promise, igniting an exquisite shiver of rebirth along my nerves. My fingers twisted reflexively into the fabric of Will's rumpled shirt, anchoring myself to his impassioned conviction. From this moment on, no more hiding, no more fear of being our authentic selves. He decreed it like a sacred vow searing into my soul. We face the world on our own terms now, babe, together. My breath hitched at the blazing intensity swirling in those soulful eyes. This was the rapturous dream I'd been too afraid to give voice to under Conrad's iron grip of shame and hatred. But now, yes, the breathless acceptance spilled from my lips, swelling with emboldened defiance and adoration. Yes, Will, we face it all, the good, the bad, the judgments, everything that's ahead for us. So long as I have you by my side, I can handle any... My words cut off with a choked gasp as Will abruptly crushed his mouth to mine in a searing, passionate kiss. It blazed through me like a victory wildfire, consuming every last vestige of fear and oppression in its cleansing path. When we finally parted, twin storms of desire crackling between our fleshed bodies, Will rested his forehead to mine with a growl of pure, possessive need. "Then let's go face it all, gorgeous. Our new world is waiting for us out there, and I can't wait another second to start living it with you." Clutching my lover's strong frame, I let the tears flow freely and release in elation. Conrad would have shriveled from the unapologetic displays of our queer passion, but he no longer had any power to stop it. Which was why, without a shred of shame, I grabbed Will by the lapels and dragged him in for another fervent claiming of the liberty that was finally rapturously ours. Our ardent kisses and roaming hands quickly spiraled into unbridled need right there in the middle of the boardroom aftermath. It was as if years of repressed longing and furtive glances were finally allowed to detonate in a blaze of unrestrained passion. "God, I want you," Will rasped hungrily against my lips. His callous palms blazed scorching trails up the backs of my thighs, bunching my skirt indecently high. "Need to feel every inch of you surrounding me again, gorgeous." An embarrassing whimper escaped me at his heated words and possessive grip, looking around at the scattered remnants of Conrad's disgrace. The overturned chair where he'd collapsed, the shut-down projector still displaying his vile discrimination, made my blood sing with rebellious lust. "Take me then," I challenged brazenly, capturing Will's lush lower lip between my teeth. "Claim me right here where that bastard can't stop us anymore." A full-body shudder rippled through Will's powerful frame as he yanked me flush against his rapidly stiffening arousal. Our mouths slanted and meshed with pornographic fervor, all restraint obliterated. My fingers scrabbled at his belt buckle as I gripped him shamelessly. "You want to ride you on the tabletop where they tried to bury us, Will. I want to come apart screaming your name for the whole world to hear how free I really am." An animalistic rumble reverberated from the depths of Will's chest. Then his hands were cupping my backside, hauling me up to wrap my legs around his waist as he strode purposefully towards the long polished table. "As you wish, my love," he growled in my ear, sending molten lava scorching through my veins. "Let's make this decadent altar to wealth and power ours in the most deliciously unholy way." So with that, Will deposited me atop the slick wood surface, already shoving my skirt up over my hips and dragging my dampened panties aside. I hissed at the first callous glide of his fingers through my arousal's slick folds, thighs falling wantonly open. His honeyed gaze raked over my splayed form with naked reverence. "So goddamn gorgeous," he rasped thickly, dipping to trail smoldering kisses along the sensitive crease of my inner thighs, and all mine to worship as I please. Yes, I gasped out the fevered agreement, back arching as Will's talented tongue found my aching center. My fingers fisted tightly in his mussed hair, holding him firmly in place as he lavished every lash and stroke of adoring devotion between my quaking thighs. The obscene, wet sounds of Will's ravenous mouth on my sex filled the cavernous room, no doubt echoing through any thin walls. Heat lashed across my cheeks in a blinding wave at the thought of anyone potentially overhearing the unmistakable audio of me being consumed so thoroughly. My father's oppressive ghost seemed to be jeering at. Could I truly commit this blasphemous sin against everything he stood for, here in this hallowed temple of power and status? With a defiant cry, I wrenched Will's mouth up to mine, devouring his lush lips in a messy tangle of tangled breaths and roaming hands. When he drew back slightly, pupils swallowing the rich brown of his eyes, I had my answer. Fuck me, I commanded without a shred of shame. Fuck me until every hateful cobweb of my father's influence is erased by how deliciously we desecrate it all. An incoherent growl burst from Will as he attacked my clothes with renewed fervor, stripping me bare beneath his molten gaze. I sprawled wantonly before my lover's ravenous appraisal, daring the shadows of our past to judge this liberation. Flinging aside his shirt with equal abandon, Will loomed over me on the table in all his chiseled glory. His proud arousal bobbed heavy and flush from the V of his open trousers, sending a fresh gush of liquid fire pooling in my belly. When his mouth claimed me again in a searing, rapacious kiss, I could taste the salt musk of my desire smeared across his lips. I surrendered to it utterly with a muffled moan, body arching into the unyielding heat of his muscular frame, pinning me to the tabletop. Take what's yours, I panted against the blazing brand of his tongue. My fingernails raked stinging lines of possession across his flexed shoulders as I savored the hiss of pleasure pain that the burn elicited. Those words were the catalyst, unleashing the wildfire of Will's pent-up hunger. One scorching second, he was devouring my mouth in bruising desperation. The next, I was abruptly flipped over into a deliciously compromising position on my hands and knees atop the sleek wood. You want it, baby? Will's gravel rasp boasted across my spine as a thick crown notched against my entrance, coating it in our mingled arousal. Want me to let loose and defile this monument to corruption and hate with how much I fucking cherish you? God, yes. I cried out shamelessly, trembling with need and the exhilarating exhibitionism. With a sharp slap to my backside that stung deliciously, Will drove home in one mind-whiting thrust that punched the air from my lungs. Then let them all hear how thoroughly I take what's mine. Will's thick length stretched and filled me with exquisite possession, stoking the flames of our defiant passion. My fingers clawed at the polished tabletop as he withdrew nearly all the way, only to slam home again with punishing force. Oh God! The wanton cry was torn from my lips, body jolting with the shock waves of rapturous friction. Will's broad palms branded searing trails up the arched expanse of my back, scorching me with his ardent ownership. That's it, gorgeous. He growled against the sweat-dampened nape of my neck. Let the whole world know how thoroughly I reduce you to ecstasy. As if to punctuate his carnal decree, Will's hips snapped forward sharply, impaling me on his rigid length with a lewd smack of flesh. Stars danced behind my fluttering lids as electric jolts of sensation lanced through my nerves. Will. Oh, Will. I could only keen his name over and over like a devout prayer, lost to the intoxicating rhythm he commanded. Every slam of his hips reshaping my silken depths branded his possession deeper into my core. Dimly I was aware of the harsh slap of skin on wood reverberating through the cavernous room alongside our mingled cries of rapture. Would anyone outside hear the unmistakable soundtrack of our unholy desecration and know just how blasphemously I gloried in Will's scorching claiming? The twisted thrill of exhibition only stoked my arousal into an inferno singeing every receptor. I twisted at the waist, craning to capture Will's lips in a messy, open-mouthed clash of tongues and shared panting breaths. His smoldering amber gaze bored into mine, stripping me bare with its smoldering intensity. I can feel how close you are, babe, he rasped, devouring my parted lips hungrily. Get nice and loud with it, okay? Give them all a fucking performance to remember. With the sharp buck of his hips that punched the air anew from my lungs, Will found and mercilessly targeted that swooning cluster of nerve deep inside. A fractured litany of curses and pleas tumbled shamelessly from my lips, shredding the last vestiges of reservation. Yes, ease. Oh fuck, Will, right there. You're gonna make me come. Oh God, oh God. Ecstasy blazed across every electrified nerve ending, stoking me inevitably closer to the shattering crest. As it built to an exquisite, unbearable peak with each piston of Will's pelvis, his sweat-slicked hand abruptly snaked between our undulating bodies. Calloused fingertips found my swollen, aching bundle of nerves, circling and delivering an almost brutal stroke in time with his masterful thrust. My scream of release punched out with surprising force, back bowing like a strung bow as I shattered utterly around Will's thick invasion. My fluttering inner walls convulsed with rhythmic pulses, milking him in rapacious waves as a kaleidoscope of starburst ecstasy detonated across my vision. The broken, filthy sound of my cries being muffled unsuccessfully into the tabletop only spurred Will's relentless driving into my spasming depths. He chased his own release with wild abandon, slick ridges gliding in the silken heat of our joined arousal. "Look at me," he rasped in a stevedore's growl, fingers tangling in my hair to wrench my head back at a sharp angle. "Look me in the eye when I fucking paint you." Our gazes locked and smoldered, the blazing fusion of our connection scorching away every fleck of shame or regret. With a harsh grunt punched from the depths of his powerful frame, Will found his blazing rapture cresting inside me in thick, heated lashes. We clung together in a sweaty, panting tangle atop the pristine table, chests heaving in the delirious afterglow. There was no disguising the obscene tableaus greeting any passers-by who stumbled upon us, our clothing scattered, bodies disheveled and flushed with exertion, the smeared evidence of desire painted across my thighs. A breathless chuckle finally pushed past my bruised lips. "Well, I think it's safe to say your father's specter will forever be exorcised from this space." Will's rumbling laugh reverberated through where he was still buried to the hilt inside me, sparking tiny shock waves ricocheting through my sensitive depths. "Among other things," he murmured, nuzzling the curve of my throat adoringly. Gazing down at me with an intensity that stole the air from my lungs anew, Will tenderly brushed the disheveled strands from my brow. "Looks like I've got my work cut out to keep exorcising those inner demons for you. Beautiful, starting with wherever our next adventure takes us from here." He punctuated the vow with a lingering, searing kiss that left me dizzy and alight with renewed longing. This was only the first of many defiant stamps we would etch upon the world, uncaring of anyone's judgments or scorn, only bound by our blazing truth together. With a breathless laugh of sheer elation, I rolled as deftly so Will's solid weight pinned me deliciously to the table once more. "Well then, Mr. Cook," I challenged with a roguish arch of one brow, "I do believe it's time we got the hell out of this place and picked our first destination to thoroughly defile." The low growl that rumbled from Will's chest was all the hot-blooded promise I needed. Our adventure had only just begun. Free, the word reverberated through my very core like the resonant peal of a bell finally unchained. Each breath tasted sweeter, richer, imbued with the rarefied air of emancipation from Conrad's poisonous shackles. As Will and I strolled hand in hand from the offices of Davis Enterprises, the symbolic weight slowed from my shoulders with every step. No longer did the sleek steel and glass monolith loom like an oppressive specter. Its towering facade was just another monument in our rear view, quickly fading from all significance. The world seemed to sparkle with vivid possibility the instant we cleared the revolving doors and hit the sunny sidewalk. A kaleidoscope of colors, sounds, and faces swirled around us, no longer obscured by Conrad's hateful monochrome filter. Well, Will's rich timbre rumbled in my ear as we meandered aimlessly along the cityscape. The jaunty lilt in his voice mirrored the buoyant lightness suffusing my soul. Where should we go for our first stop on the grand tour of our new life together? His words ignited a surge of gleeful recklessness in my veins. We could go anywhere, do anything on an utter whim now. No more schedules or restrictions dictated by Conrad's draconian decrees. Pulling him to an abrupt halt, I captured Will's face between my palms and simply drank in the handsome contours. This incredible man, whose kindness and inner light had reached me even in the depths of bleakest despair, was mine. Truly and openly mine to cherish, unbounded by shame or fear. My fingers trailed reverently across the sharp line of his jaw, the arch of those striking cheekbones. Will's lush lips curved in an indulgent smile, amber eyes crinkling with both fond amusement and naked desire simmering at my rapturous appraisal. "You know," I murmured at length, pitching my voice to that low, thrumming timbre I knew drove him wild. "There happens to be a rather upscale hotel just around the block. Plush accommodations, unbeatable views, and most importantly," drawing him infinitesimally closer, I could feel the stutter of Will's pulse against my palms as my tongue traced a teasing line along the seam of his lips. Exceptionally discreet about any noises that may potentially disturb the neighbors, if you catch my drift. The low rumble that rolled through Will's powerful frame and into mine was my only answer at first. Then his mouth was on mine, hot and insistent, in a branding kiss of pure possession. When he finally broke away with an audible groan, mahogany irises had been nearly swallowed by pupils blown wide with naked need. I warned them about a hurricane of incredible proportions hitting their pristine suites. He rasped against the swollen curve of my lower lip, complete with an aftershock unlike anything they've ever endured before. A shudder of delirious anticipation blazed through my nerves at the blatantly carnal promise. "Well then, Mr. Cook," I purred, sliding my palm brazenly down to cup the rapidly stiffening ridge in his snug trousers. "I do suggest we secure our accommodations post-haste." We must have been quite the brazen spectacle on that busy city street, disheveled from our tryst still in the boardroom, flushed with newly freed desire, and utterly uncaring of any scandalized glances as we stumbled our way towards the chic hotel lobby. Upon presenting the stunned concierge with my Amex and demanding the finest luxury suite available immediately, I noticed a few matronly sniffs of disapproval from the waiting seating area. No doubt they took one look at my sex-mussed hair and Will's swollen, well-kissed lips and guessed why we needed the top-tier escape so urgently. All I could do was grace them with a shameless wink before clasping my love's hand proudly and leading us to the elevators. I made a point to pull Will into one last searing, unrestrained kiss of possession just as the mirrored doors swept closed, a tantalizing preview for our new life. "Good God, you're insatiable already," Will groaned against my lips when we parted, cradling my jaw reverently in those work-roughened palms I adored. "I absolutely love how deliciously wanton you've become now that Conrad's vile grip is broken." A fresh thrill blazed through my veins at the raw hunger glazing his whiskey stare, mingling with the blazing pride. If our actions in the lobby raised some pearl clutching, I could only imagine what obscene delights awaited within the privacy of our decadent sweet sanctuary. Drawing a deep, grounding breath, I gathered Will's powerful frame flush against me and allowed myself to simply savor the blazing euphoria radiating from my very core. "Get used to it, my love," I purred in his ear, savoring his full-bodied groan as my teeth grazed the thundering pulse at his throat. "We've got an eternity of ecstatic decadence ahead to revel in now, completely unshackled, and I plan to indulge us both in every ounce of love and lust until neither of us can walk straight." The shudder that rippled through Will was answer enough. This was only the beginning of our insatiable quest to experience everything we'd been denied until now. The universe had better brace itself for the shockwave of our passion because we were just getting started. Our hotel suite was an opulent palace of hedonistic luxury, plush king bed draped in sinfully soft sheets, deep soaking tub perfectly sized for two, and of course the jaw-dropping view of the city skyline glittering in the twilight. Not that Will and I paid much attention to the sumptuous amenities at first. The instant the door latched behind us, our ravenous desire and cathartic release consumed all else. Frantic hands tore at clothing as we blazed a path across the suite, lips locked in a desperate, hungry clash. My suit jacket and Will's shirt were the first casualties, forgotten in a crumpled trail towards the bedroom. "Need you so badly," Will growled between searing kisses, deft fingers making molten work of my belt buckle. "Been too fucking long since I could take you properly." "But then take me," I rasped the breathless entreaty, shrugging out of my ruined dress shirt to stand bare-chested before him. Will's burning gaze raked across my exposed torso with rapacious yearning, branding every inch of flushed skin. A harsh groan punched from my lips as he abruptly seized me in a searing kiss, pinning me bodily against the nearest wall. His thigh rode brazenly up between my legs, grinding delicious friction against my swiftly stiffening length. Going to make up for all that lost time, and then some were promised in a rugged rasp against my parted lips. "You'll be lucky if you can walk straight after I'm through ravishing every perfect inch." I could only whimper my surrender as he attacked the hollow of my throat with hot, open-mouthed kisses. My fingers knotted in his sweat-dampened locks, urging him lower with breathless pleas tumbling over my tongue. "That's it, gorgeous." Will gentled his calloused palms up the arch line of my spine as he sank gracefully to his knees. "Let me hear just how delirious with want you are for me." Those dexterous fingers drifted teasingly along the groove of hip bone trailing down to free my throbbing arousal at last. A fractured gasp was all I could manage at the first velvet heat of his mouth engulfing me in one slick glide. "Oh God." The broken exclamation echoed off the sweet walls as Will's wicked tongue worked its magic in languid swirls and rhythmic suction, every swollen ridge and contour lavished by that sublime heat. My feet nearly went out from under me as euphoric dizziness lashed across my nerve endings. Will's strong forearms banded like a vice at my hips, anchoring me upright against the cradle of his hungry mouth. "Fuck Will." My choked litany of devotion fell on ragged gasp as he applied the perfect suction and melting heat for my aching length. Electric pulses ricocheted from my groin to the very soles of my feet, gathering into an inescapable coil of rapture. Just as that peak seemed inevitable, Will drew off tortuously slow, painting every velvet inch of my shaft in pearlescent arousal from base to tip. with tantalizing swirls of his sinful tongue. My broken whine of raw knee transmuted into a hoarse shout when he abruptly sealed those lush lips around the swollen crown, working it mercilessly with hollowed cheeks and swirling flicks of his skilled muscle. Close. The delirious admission spilled from my lips like a confession as the heat began spiraling to unbearable, white-hot crescendo at the base of my spine. I'm so fuck-damn close, babe. Not one to be denied, would just rumbled a possessive sound around the velvet depths where my cock pulsed and wept with desperation. His callous palms scored intricate patterns down the quivering backs of my thighs, urging them wider in shameless invitation of submission to his reverent worship. With the final glide of his hand encircling the root of my arousal and throat relaxing wantonly, Will stared up at me through lust-hooded lashes. His rich amber irises glittered with carnal dare to let go. That was all the blazing admonition I needed. Every muscle turned to liquid rapture, wave after scorching wave of bliss lancing through my veins as I spent myself in hot, pulsing ribbons down my lover's welcoming throat. To Will's infinite credit, he drank down every bitter drop like a droughted man at enosis, swallowing my pearlescent offering with guttural moans of blissful fervor. Only once the last electrifying shudder fled my spent frame did he carefully seal his lips and draw back with a messy, illicit pop that punched the air from my lungs anew. Jesus Will. I hazily marveled once my lashes fluttered apart, surveying his swollen, well-kissed lips and glittering eyes awash with male ego and haughty satisfaction at unraveling me so exquisitely. He just lazily swiped the back of his hand across his mouth, a lopsided smirk curling those sinful lips as he held my dazed gaze with bedroom-eyed intensity. I told you this suite was about to become ground zero for an earth-shattering event. Didn't I, babe? Only then did the deeper meaning of his husky vow fully sink in make. This was just the initial tremor unleashing an unstoppable sensual force between us now that our love was finally unchained. The real seismic pleasure was still yet to ravage the foundations of everything in its path. As Will surged fluidly back to his feet and seized my lips in a fevered, messy clash, I clung tight to his powerful frame and thrilled at the promise roaring through my veins. This explosive beginning was only our opening salvo in an eternity of passionate embraces to come. With giddy, unfettered laughter bubbling up from the depths of my soul, I surrendered completely to the delicious prospect of sinking into blissful oblivion with my beloved over and over and over again all night long. The world wouldn't know what hit it by the time our quake had finally run its glorious course,